Dennis lost all hope when he went fishing but didn't catch anything all day. But suddenly, his fishing rod started pulling, and it was pulling hard. He had been fishing in these waters for years, but had never experienced anything like this before. Dennis realized what he had caught. He knew he should have left it alone. After almost an hour of battling the rod, he finally reeled the monster in. He had never seen anything like this before. Dennis needed to take a closer look, but when he did, the creature started acting very aggressively toward him. When Dennis was sure about what he saw, tears lit up in his eyes. He immediately called the police. Everybody needed to know about his discovery. But what creature had Dennis pulled out from the water? How had it gotten there? And why did this discovery bring Dennis to tears? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. What was so surprising was that Dennis caught the monster at his favorite fishing spot. Dennis and his granddad have caught thousands of fish here, but they've never caught anything like this. Sadly, his granddad wasn't here anymore to see Dennis's greatest catch. Dennis often went on his fishing trip with one or more of his buddies. They would drive their small boat out to a location and spend all day together. But today, on the death day of his granddad, none of his friends were available. Going out onto the water alone was not an option. It could be dangerous if something goes wrong and you are all alone. You would need somebody there, but Dennis needed a distraction today, so he ensured he could go out onto the water that day. Dennis ran out of options, so he ended up posting an invitation on a forum board for local fishermen, asking if somebody wanted to join him out on the water today. And luckily, it did not take long before he got a reaction. Dennis got a message in his inbox from a fisher who had only joined the forum 2 weeks ago. He would have liked to find somebody with more experience, but nobody else reacted, and Dennis really didn't want to be alone today, so this rookie would have to do. Dennis would pick up the rookie in a bar the next town over, and then they would drive to one of his favorite spots. In remembrance of his granddad, Dennis wanted to go to their favorite spot. He was always guaranteed a couple of good catches here, and he thought this might be fun for the rookie. After an hour of driving, Dennis finally arrived at the bar. He walked inside and instantly felt very uncomfortable. He wanted to find the rookie and leave this place as soon as possible. But suddenly, chills ran down his spine and his heart started racing. It felt like he was being watched. Dennis wanted to stay and wait for the rookie, but the longer he stayed, the more unsafe he felt. Finally, he couldn't stand the feeling anymore. Dennis decided to leave the bar and get back to the car, but when he stood up and tried to leave, he noticed someone was following him. As he walked to the exit, he heard footsteps coming behind him. Dennis quickly ran back to the car and tried to get the keys out of his pocket. But just when he was about to unlock the car, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Dennis turned around in fear and saw a casually dressed middle-aged man with a beard. "Hey, I've been looking for you," the stranger said. Dennis couldn't stand it anymore. "Who are you, and why are you following me? I'm so sorry if I scared you. I am Drake, the rookie from the forum. I get so nervous around new people, I didn't know how to approach you, so I was just sitting in the bar until I saw you leave." Dennis got a weird feeling about this guy. It all sounded like an odd lie, and besides, Drake doesn't even look like a fisher. After getting to know each other better, Drake told Dennis that he didn't have much fishing experience, but he felt like this was his passion. Dennis told him he would teach him a thing or two. Dennis still didn't completely trust Drake, but maybe he wasn't so bad after all. Drake started telling Dennis about his newly found great fishing career on the ride over to the lake. Drake began to brag about his skills and told Dennis all about how he should be fishing and what rods and lures he needed to use. "Maybe one day you will be as great as I am," he said. Dennis tried to be nice, but he was getting more and more annoyed at the rookie. Who did he think he was, trying to tell him what to do? Dennis had been fishing for over a decade. He learned all his skills from the greatest fisherman he knew, his granddad. There was no better teacher than him, right? When they got to the water, they unloaded the boat together, which surprisingly went really smoothly. It seemed like Drake had finally stopped trying to be the expert, but Dennis wasn't ready to let it go just yet. Drake had something waiting for him. Out on the water, Dennis was ready to show that he didn't need any advice from anyone. He wanted to show off who's the real fishing expert amongst them. But this did not go to plan at all. Dennis was embarrassing himself and his granddad with what he did next. While Drake was reeling in fish after fish, Dennis could not even get a guppy on the boat. How was this possible? Dennis always caught the biggest fish here, but maybe he wasn't as good as he thought he was. Perhaps he needed his granddad more than he thought he would. Drake really needed to pee, but as they were on a small wooden fisherman's boat, there was no toilet. He had no choice but to pee off the other side of the ship, so he did. While Drake was peeing, Dennis quickly went through his fishing gear. Surprisingly, most of it seemed familiar to him, but this one particular thing really stood out. Drake had a few really odd-looking lures Dennis had never seen before. Could this be what gave him all the success? But then he heard Drake coming back from the front of the boat. Without looking, Dennis quickly grabbed one of those unique lures. As Drake was pulling in another catch just minutes later, Dennis quickly changed his lure to the one he stole from Drake. While Dennis was putting it on, he took a closer look at it. It looked so weird. He could not imagine getting even one fish with this. Dennis didn't know he minutes away from the greatest catch ever. It only took a few minutes before something started pulling on Dennis his line, and it started pulling hard. He was so caught off guard by it he almost let his rod slip. He had never experienced anything like this before. How was this possible? Dennis regained his composure just in time and started fighting the fish. This was bigger, heavier, and stronger than anything he had caught before. Dennis began to think this could be the biggest monster he had ever caught. And he was right. Dennis's hands and arms were sore from fighting the fish. Dennis started wondering what he could have possibly hooked that would put up such a fight. Neither of them had ever experienced anything like this before. This kind of strength did not come from any creature known to man. Dennis didn't want to admit it, but to get the fish out of the water, he needed Drake's help to steer the boat in the right direction. Drake didn't hesitate a second and jumped to the steering wheel. They were working together like they had been a duo for years. Dennis tried to hold on to his rod, but the monster was pulling too hard. Dennis didn't want to admit it, but he realized he couldn't do it alone. So he shouted to Drake, "What are you doing? Come over here and help me." With Drake's help, he managed to reel in the final meters of line. After battling the monster for half an hour, they finally caught a glimpse of the horrifying creature. Drake, shocked, let go of the rod and ran back to the steering wheel, sailing away in panic. Minutes later, he realized Dennis wasn't on the boat. He must have fallen when Drake let go. Drake quickly turned around. Back at the scene, there was no sign of Dennis. Fearing the worst, he scanned the waters until he spotted something floating. It was Dennis. He pulled him aboard, but Dennis was furious. They were too deep into this to give up now. Blaming Drake for nearly getting him killed and losing the catch, Dennis called it a mistake to bring a rookie. Drake, overwhelmed with guilt, promised to find the rod and finish what they started. Dennis pointed to where he last saw it, and soon they found it floating. As soon as they grabbed it, the line began to race again. The monster was still hooked. This time, they worked together, determined to bring it in. After an hour-long struggle, the beast surfaced. United in effort, they managed to pull it aboard. But the creature thrashed aggressively, and in a split second, it bit Dennis. In pain and shock, Dennis tossed it back into the water. The monster escaped. Dennis's arms swelled rapidly and turned purple. He collapsed, muttering, "Drake, I don't feel so good." Drake rushed to the first aid kit, but it was useless. He called the Coast Guard, sending photos of Dennis's condition and the creature. They advised him to stay calm. Help was on the way. 30 minutes later, the Coast Guard arrived. Dennis had gone pale. Realizing boat transport wouldn't be fast enough, they informed Drake that a helicopter was en route. The helicopter arrived, and with the crew's help, they hoisted Dennis up. Weak and barely conscious, Dennis began to slip into unconsciousness. Drake tried to keep him awake, but Dennis eventually faded. When Dennis awoke in a hospital, a police officer stood beside him. He looked at his arm. It was miraculously healed. Confused, he asked what happened. The officer explained that the fish they caught was a rare venomous species. Its bite is typically fatal. There is no known anti-venom, but Dennis had survived. The reason? A blood transfusion from a friend, the officer said. But when Dennis asked about Drake, he was told no one by that name was listed, not even in the helicopter manifest. Then came another surprise. The officer said Dennis had made a historic discovery, and the press was waiting. He was to be escorted for an interview. Dennis asked for privacy to get dressed. While preparing to leave, Dennis noticed a letter tucked under a chair cushion. It was from Drake. His real name was James. James revealed in the letter that he was Dennis's long-lost brother. They had been separated during their parents' divorce when Dennis was only 2. Dennis was raised by their grandfather, while James remained with their mother. James had searched for Dennis for years, eventually finding his ad on a fishing forum. Feeling unworthy, he chose to remain in the background, but their fishing trip gave him the chance to reconnect without revealing the truth. Dennis was overwhelmed. He regretted yelling at James and now longed to meet him again someday.